Welcome, everyone, to the Christmas episode of We Won, Let's Eat, the Jewish Food Podcast, joined as always by Bradley Maychov and Matt Erickson. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, and yes, you heard me right.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to those of you who are listening who celebrate it. The three of us do not, but we do. Well, we celebrate it in the most Jewish way there is to celebrate it, which is Chinese food in a movie.
Exactly. Well, so my dad converted, so we spend Christmas Eve with his side of the family.
Okay.
And then do Jewish Christmas.
Okay.
The next day. But
So what was it like, growing up with the sort of split holiday? Not in your, home wasn't a split holiday. But
No, it wasn't. My dad converted before my parents got married, so he very much feels a connection to Judaism more than he did growing up Lutheran.
Okay.
It was always made very clear that it was just about spending time with family.
Okay.
Than anything else. That being said, it was still very confusing as an elementary school kid.
I'm sure.
Having it kind of both ways, but not. So it was interesting. I always looked forward to Jewish Christmas.
Yeah.
More so than Christmas. But, yeah.
Bradley, is there a go-to Chinese either restaurant or specific dish, no matter what restaurant you go to, that is a must for you?
Not really. My tastes in the Chinese food that you find here, at least, have evolved over time. But yeah, we really went to Yangtze because it's close to our house.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, I couldn't tell you the last time I did Chinese food in a movie on Christmas. It's
shame.
Well, for a while, my mom would just cook something, and usually like a brisket or chicken, not a Christmas ham or anything, by any means,
ham?
Or Hanukkah ham. But yeah, I remember more almost being surprised that we weren't doing Chinese food in a movie than actually going and doing Chinese food in a movie. For whatever reason, it kind of went by the wayside. For a few years, we've gone to California to visit family, sort of over the Christmas, New Year's holiday, and we've gone and gotten pho, which is close.
Same part of the world.
Same part of the world. Yeah.
Is it Vietnamese or Thai?
Yeah.
Vietnamese.
And so that's become a bit of a new tradition almost to go get pho.
I can get on board with that.
But then some people in the family,
right.
the extended
Minnesota-fying it.
The extended family didn't want to go to get pho anymore, so I can't remember what we did last year. But yeah, there isn't really a set tradition for us.
We always went to New Beijing and Eden Prairie growing up. It was close to the mall where the movie theater was, and it was open.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the gist of Jewish Christmas, isn't it?
I think so.
These two things are open.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, it's still always cream cheese puffs. Maybe it's because it's kind of a Hanukkah-like food
Love
with
cream cheese puffs,
cheese and things fried, and it's great. So it's the Hanukkah food of Chinese restaurants.
Love cream cheese puffs. Egg drop soup.
Yeah, it's good. It's never
Place I
been a
went to
go-to.
growing up in Michigan. Really good egg drop soup.
I would also go to Great Mandarin in the mall because it was there at Eden Prairie Center. It's still there.
Is it really?
Yeah. Still in the mall.
Seems unusual.
Yeah. It's been there forever. Back when Eden Prairie Center was empty all
Back
the time.
in its mall rats
Yeah.
days.
Back in the mall rats days. Great Mandarin was there, and there was a movie theater.
Great Mandarin's still there, and there's still a movie theater.
A much better
Much
movie
nicer
theater.
movie theater, I'm sure.
Yeah. Big upgrade.
Yeah.
Have you guys noticed a troubling trend on Jewish Christmas?
Which is? I think I know where you're going with this, but
It's not just ours anymore.
it's not just ours anymore.
Can't let us have anything.
Yeah. I mean, I understand it in a sense that at its heart, sort of like the way you celebrated Christmas with your dad's family is, about being with family. And this is sort of about being out with family also. And it's still the only two things that are open.
Yeah, I don't buy it. Sorry, because growing up, it wasn't that way at all. That it was like later in high school.
Well, is it a relatively recent trend that movies
Yeah.
get released on Christmas, or has they always gotten released on Christmas? Because
I think you're right.
Well, there's always something around Christmas. It wasn't necessarily Christmas Day.
because
but
now
always stuff.
I feel like like movies actually get released on Christmas because more people are
When everyone's off school
going out,
and
yeah.
off work, and so they can get
Go out
everybody in
and
the
do it.
doors. Maybe so. It's Hollywood's fault, and since
Yeah.
we run Hollywood, it's our own fault.
Playing into all the stereotypes.
Crap!
Way to go. No,
We can't let ourselves have anything.
So we are why we can't have those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But I do think, I do wonder if it comes back to, and this is a huge reach, I grant you, but when you'd open gifts for, we'd open on Hanukkah and you have these toys that you'd sit and you'd have to put together and you'd play with, and assume kids got the same things for Christmas. That are there less intricate gifts that require sort of the less setup? If you're getting like a video game, you can play it for a little bit and put it away, and then go to a movie. And
Hold on. Have you known a kid to play a video game for a little bit?
no,
and then
but if
put
they're
it away?
getting dragged out of the house by the parents,
Yeah.
who are like, "All right, we've been trapped in this house for
Sure.
all day with you people, from the time you come downstairs to open presents at 0:30 until." At a certain point,
whatever they do, I have no idea
I don't
what
know.
goes on.
I'm making
in those
this up
homes.
as I go along. At a certain point, it's got to be, all right, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm losing my mind. I got to get out of the house. We're going to a movie.
Yeah.
Maybe. Still.
Doesn't explain the Chinese food.
It doesn't explain
No.
Chinese food. I don't know. Christmas, Christmas lunches, if you've Christmas dinner, if you have that like at noon, you have leftovers later that night for second dinner. I don't know how this works. You got to go as long as you're going
You a
out.
hobbit? I'm really confused.
Yeah. where are you going with this?
I'm just saying it's
Third lunch, second dinner.
People have there are people, not us, but like Thanksgiving, for example.
Yeah.
People have Thanksgiving dinner at like 1.
Yeah, been there. I had
And
one at 10 this year, 10 a.m.
A dinner at 10 a.m.?
My grandma thought I was.
All right.
Okay, and then you have leftovers later that day.
Yes, Brad, it was weird.
So then do you have leftovers?
No, we went to another Thanksgiving later that day.
God, that's so much turkey.
Oh, man. Last year, we had 3, and it was at noon, 3, and 6. I couldn't look at food by the last one.
How were you awake by the last one?
I don't know.
Just curl up on the couch while everybody else is eating?
I think at the last one, I sat in a chair and stared at the floor. Like, it was awful.
So my point is, you're home opening presents early. You have an early family lunch/dinner, and if you're going out to a movie anyway, and you just need to get out of the house, and there's still only one thing open to go eat, maybe that's where it comes from.
I don't know. I feel like we're a little out of our depth here.
A roundabout
I think we
way to
needed
make
to ask a goy who's a friend of the pod and
Yes.
figure this out.
We do need to do that. Also, we are going to now bring in the aforementioned Aline Sussman. Aline and I caught up to talk about how Chinese food became Jewish Christmas and the history of that. We are now joined on the podcast by Aline Sussman. Aline is the author of the Jewish blog, jewishblog.wordpress.com, and the Instagram @jewishblog. Aline, how are you?
I'm well, Lonnie. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So you wrote for TC Jew Folk, you wrote for us almost a year ago to the date about Andrew Zimmern and some of the controversial comments he made regarding Chinese food in America. And you sort of went over a little bit of the connection between Jews and Chinese cuisine and, I suppose Asian cuisine in general in that piece. And being that, Matt and Bradley and I spent a little bit of time at the beginning of this talking about Christmas and how Chinese food is very much a part of our personal and our as Jews Christmas traditions in a way. I thought this would be a really good opportunity to have you on to talk a little bit more about that, and also because you are a Jew of color. You come from, your mother is Chinese. And I just thought this would be a great opportunity for you to come on and help educate us a little bit more about about how that tradition, at least in your view, may have started.
Yeah, I'll try.
Well, that would be helpful, I think. So,
what do you want to know that I might know?
So, in the piece, you wrote a lot about how the controversy that Andrew Zimmern started, sort of lumping all Chinese food together, as in his words, horseshit restaurants. You sort of talked about that there's a lot of parallels between the Chinese and the Jews who immigrated to the United States. How, I guess in your research, not for this necessarily just this article, but as a whole, how did you find those two? How did you find those two so sort of simpatico?
So a lot of it, like many things Jewish, goes back to New York City. And, there was a huge influx in the late 19th century into the early 20th century of Jews into the East Coast. But that's also true of Chinese. So the Chinese came over mostly to work on the railroads out west. And then when those jobs dried up, or when laws were put into place to kind of tamp down on the Chinese and immigration of any more Chinese into the U.S., many moved east, and they moved to New York City. And when you look at the proximity, they moved to Chinatown. And Chinatown is just directly south and adjacent to the Lower East Side. So there's a lot of geographic proximity between these two communities. And culturally speaking, I can't speak to everything that's in common between Jews and Jewish culture and Chinese culture, but there are a lot of similarities in the sense of there's a huge emphasis on education. There's a huge emphasis on progressing in society. And so those two things are things in common that bring those cultures together.
And it would seem like, in our conversation before we started, the families tend to be very tight-knit. They tend to be very close also.
Yep, that is true. Traditionally, Chinese families are tight-knit not just through family culture, but often you have, 3 generations living under a roof together. So my family on my mom's side, who's Chinese, when they came over in the 1880s, they came over to Los Angeles, and they all lived in a compound basically together, like a couple of apartments connected by a courtyard, and you had great aunts, great uncles, great grandparents, the kids, the grandkids, all under one roof. And Jews similarly in, a certain period of time lived in very close proximity to their families as well. And the emphasis and the ties between family can be very strong in both cultures. So you're 100% right in that.
So your mom converted to Judaism, but, in sort of talking to her, I don't know what kind of family sort of research you've done, but the Chinese family, and again, fully in my own ignorance, in terms of religion and religious culture in China, what did she grow up with, and does that still exist with in her Chinese family?
So she grew up, and I'm only speaking based on my own family's experience. Don't extrapolate to all Chinese people. She grew up very secular Christian. And so they didn't really go to church. They didn't celebrate Christmas as a religious holiday. It was more like a family gathering, and it's all about family and getting together. And so she went to college and met her freshman roommate who was Jewish. And she just kind of became fascinated by Judaism, and then eventually she met my dad, and that kind of sealed the deal, not only with him, but with Judaism. And interestingly enough, she's not the only Jew in my Chinese family. I have a great uncle who's Jewish. One of my mom's brothers, she's one of 4 siblings, is also Jewish. So there's a strong contingency in my Chinese family of Jews. And then, of course, I have cousins who are Jewish, and as I refer to myself as Chewish, Chinese and Jewish. And then my mom's maiden name also is Chew, Chew. So, total play on words.
It works on a lot of levels.
Yep, totally. And then for the food blog, and Chew also is, appropriate. So kind of a triple entendre.
Yes.
Yep.
Does being, Jewish and of Chinese descent, does the connection that Jews often make to Chinese food and Christmas? Is it flattering, insulting, none of the above, other?
No, I just think it's an interesting kind of cultural tradition that has evolved over century, honestly. I mean, my family in LA was Chinese and, my mom is Jewish, but she didn't grow up with the Jewish Christmas kind of tradition. She kind of came into it when she joined the fold, so to speak. But, there's an interesting history of why it's happened and kind of the genesis of why there's like, quote unquote, a Jewish Christmas. So again, going back to New York City, there's the proximity of Chinatown and the Lower East Side and those two communities. But also when you think about Christmas, most Christians, years ago, and probably still the case today in many ways, they would get together on Christmas with their families and they would go to Mass or they would go to services and then they'd have family dinner. So like, what do the Jews do? They don't go to church. They don't have family dinner on Christmas. Right. And Chinese also, like, what do you do? So those two groups are the largest non-Christian communities in New York. And then also, conveniently, Chinese restaurants for many, many decades open on Christmas. The Chinese work really hard, and they're just open, the restaurants 365 days a year. So what do Jews do? Well, they would go to Chinese restaurants, and not just because they were open, but it was a very kind of comfortable culture. Chinese restaurants don't have religious symbols on their walls. They are open to all kind of denominations, and they're open to serving, anybody who walks through the door. Whereas maybe in the old days, you walk into an Italian deli in Little Italy, there are like crosses on the wall. And it's pretty much just Italians in there.
Right.
So it's almost democratic, a Chinese restaurant in a way, if that's how you want to couch it. So Jews felt comfortable going to Chinese restaurants for those reasons. And then especially on Christmas, it's almost like, well, that was our family gathering place. And like if we wanted to go out and kind of splurge a little, you go to the Chinese restaurant that's, a couple blocks away. And then frankly, there's this whole movement of, when Jews were not keeping kosher as strictly and they'd go out and eat in non-Jewish restaurants, Chinese is viewed as a cuisine that is, quote unquote, safe trafe. I don't know if you've heard this term.
I have not.
So safe trafe is a term that's used, and I've seen it only in particular to Chinese food, but it's probably true of other cultures too, where because the trafe part, shrimp, pork, whatever, was like minced up and hidden in a dumpling. Like, oh, it was okay to eat as a Jew because you didn't see it, right? You didn't see it in the egg roll. You didn't see it in like the pot sticker or whatever. So people, to whatever their level was and comfort level with, saying this isn't trafe because I don't see it, some were comfortable with that. So I know that's really, it's interesting, but look, hey, everybody makes their own choices based on their own level, and
absolutely.
I do not, I don't judge that whatsoever.
No, I don't either.
No,
I do not keep kosher, so I don't judge those who do or how they choose to. Or
yeah,
people
so
who keep kosher at home but not out. Like,
yep, everyone does it differently.
Not my business. I don't care. I don't judge. Do what you do.
Yeah, I agree. But interestingly enough, so all of these reasons contributed to why, in New York, Jews tended to go out to Chinese restaurants on Christmas. And then, of course, when they moved out to the suburbs and out of the city, they carried that tradition with them. Right. Chinese restaurants followed. It happens in other cities. It happened back then. It happens today. And it's a tradition. I mean, it's a tradition. It's kind of like, it's Jewish Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here in the Twin Cities, do you have recommendations, Chinese restaurants or any other cuisine that might be open on Christmas for those who want to expand their horizons? That might be something we should check out.
I can only speak to Chinese restaurants because that's what we do.
Okay,
Christmas.
That's
there
fine.
may be others, but I'll just speak to that. So my favorite Chinese restaurants in town, 365 days a year, not just Christmas, but they're open on Christmas, are Shuang Cheng in Dinkytown. Shuang Cheng was opened in the 80s, and it actually means Twin Cities in Chinese. I think awesome. They are phenomenal all around. They have a good mix of kind of authentic Chinese dishes and then Chinese Americanized dishes, and they're just amazing. They are jam-packed, and they do a really brisk takeout. So make sure you call at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half in advance. You can also make a reservation there. So Shuang Cheng is my number one for sure. Grand Szechuan and Bloomington, also phenomenal. They take reservations. They are very, very authentic. Really delicious food, though. Absolutely excellent. not United Noodle, that's the grocery store. Sorry. Hong Kong Noodles on the U campus, also really, really great. Tends to really be jam-packed, too, on Christmas. And then Tea House is also really, really good. So there are multiple locations for Tea House. They do another brisk takeout business. So get your orders in early is what I would suggest.
And there's one in the sort of Plymouth Golden Valley
right
there. And
right near General Mills.
Conveniently right across the parking lot from a movie theater.
Exactly.
So you can double dip if that's your
That's true.
tradition. So
very true. Excellent point.
So let me ask you, you mentioned some were sort of authentic Chinese and some sort of Chinese, Americanized Chinese. Help our listeners sort of understand the difference between what those two are.
So, in the article that I wrote about a year ago, I referenced that, and you can go to TCG Folk and check out that article for a little more in depth. But essentially, there's kind of a spectrum of Asian food, and I'll just focus on Chinese. Chinese authentic food, you can call it authentic in the sense of it uses traditional Chinese ingredients. It's maybe unfamiliar to the American palate. But back in the day when Chinese restaurants were, legally relegated to Chinatowns, in order to survive when those legal restrictions were lifted and they moved out to the suburbs or moved their restaurant or opened it up to, a bigger audience, they couldn't necessarily get authentic Chinese ingredients at the time, so they used American ingredients, and they also changed maybe some of their menu items to be more appealing to an American palate. And so some might call that inauthentic Chinese food. I mean, once you're out of China, it all kind of, to a certain degree, becomes quote unquote inauthentic, and I don't mean that in a bad way. To me, that's fusion. That's evolution of a cuisine, and there's room enough in kind of the Chinese food pantheon for all of that. So, So someone might look at P.F. Chang's or Panda Express and call that inauthentic, but it still might be delicious to some people. And I think it's all like art is in the eye of the beholder. Food taste is also in the eye of the palate. Sure. No, not tongue of the palate. That sounds terrible. You know what I'm trying to say.
We know what you're trying to say.
We'll figure some phrase, but that's not
we'll
it.
Work on that, but no, that's totally fine. So, back to your favorite restaurants, do you have your reservations yet for Christmas?
No, we don't, but we will.
Okay.
Yeah, if we don't do takeout.
And what's your go-to dish? Like, I know it's hard because you name 4 or 5 different places, but like the one dish that you're looking forward to.
Oh, the dish we have to have at every meal we eat at Shuang is pan-fried noodles with shrimp and vegetables and black bean sauce. So not exactly totally kosher because of the shrimp.
Exactly.
You can get it with chicken, though. But their black bean sauce is one of the best I've had in the world. It is phenomenal. And that served warm with a crispy pan-fried noodle, just everything together in one perfect bite is my comfort food next to matzo ball soup. It is the best, literally. I've literally had meals where I've demanded matzo ball soup and these pan-fried noodles, which of course is the perfect representation of who I am ethnically.
Yes.
But it really is amazing comfort food. It is so delicious. And it actually reheats well, too.
Assuming there's leftovers.
Yes, if there's leftovers.
Well, Aline
and that's at Shuang.
Yes. Aline Sussman, thank you very much for joining us. Check out the Chewish blog, again, chewishblog.wordpress.com, and on Instagram at chewishblog. And we will have the link to your article on Andrew Zimmern in the show notes. Thank you for joining us. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you again to Aline for joining us and for the history lesson. God knows the three of us need it. No matter your Chinese food, your Chinese restaurant, or not Chinese,
whatever's open,
and you want to enjoy Christmas or Jewish Christmas, as it were, before your movie, enjoy. Thank you very much, and we will see you soon. We Won, Let's Eat, the Jewish Food Podcast, is produced by Jewfolk Inc. For more information, go to tcjewfolk.com/podcast. You can find us on Instagram at wewon.letseat. You can find Fancy Dinner Club on Instagram at Fancy Dinner Club.